summarize very quickly the end of Numbers, the book of Numbers. So in Numbers 25 through 30, we have a number of important things happening. One is that the Israelites start to worship, along with the Moabites and the Midianites, Baal, Peor, and other false gods. So right around in this area, that happens. It happens because some Midianites are intentionally trying to tempt them and get them to worship idols, and we'll come back to that as well. But it gets to be a huge problem. And one of these Midianites, a Midianite woman, is brought into the camp of Israel near the tabernacle by an Israelite, and he's going to lie with her and worship false gods and so on. And Eleazar learns of this. Now, well, not just Eleazar, his son Phinehas. So Eleazar is Aaron's son, and Aaron is dead, so Eleazar is the high priest, and his son Phinehas, who will become the high priest presumably, when he sees this happens, he runs into the camp and he slays the man and the woman, and just as God was about to come out in wrath against Israel, and this turns God's wrath away. Then Moses and Eleazar start looking around, and they realize that all of the Israelites who had rebelled against God in the wilderness at Kadesh Barnea are now dead, except for Caleb and Joshua. That means they're getting close to ready to being able to go into the promised land. And then Moses is told to go up to Mount Nebo, and this is a view from Mount Nebo. Across, here's the Jordan River, and across there then these are the plains, the beginning of the promised land. And you go up these hills. For instance, Jerusalem is just right over here. That's Moses' view of the promised land, and as close as he gets, as he is told to go and look there, but he won't go into the promised land. He then lays his hands upon Joshua and sets him apart as the new leader. The Lord instructs him in some sacrifices and oaths and some things like that. Now, in Numbers 31, God tells Moses to gather an army against the Midianites. So the Midianites are typically nomadic around here. They might spill over into here. But they're also getting up here. They're nomadic, so they go all over the place. So they've been getting up into here, and here are the plains of Moab right here. And so they've been coming up here and tempting these people. Part of the reason is because you remember our friend Balaam, who had been asked to prophesy against Israel by the Moabites, and he had been convinced by this angel to only do what God would have him do, and so he's convinced he's going to only prophesy what God would have him prophesy, but he would like to receive the wealth that is promised to him by the Moabites if he would curse Israel. And so he comes up with this great way of rationalizing things, something you and I are good at doing. He figures if he can get the Israelites to be wicked, that then God will want to curse them, and then he can curse them. He can do what God wants him to do and curse them, and the Moabites will reward him. So he is behind part of this idea of getting Midianites to go in and intentionally tempt the Israelites to get them to follow false gods. And so Moses, under God's direction, and Phinehas gather 12,000 Israelites, 1,000 from each tribe, and they go to battle against the Midianites, and they destroy them, and they destroy some of their establishments and so on. But they save a number of the women and children, which they weren't supposed to do. And Moses gets after them. He says, it's these women who were tempting you in the first place. And so they have to get rid of everything that is not absolutely clean and purifiable, and that way they aren't tempted to worship false gods. As they're getting ready to go into the promised land, and they've conquered this area up to the north, the tribes of Reuben and Gad realize that this grazing area, you remember we looked at some pictures of it, this area in Bashan, is a very desirable place for them. And they would like to actually get their inheritance over on this side rather than on this side of the River Jordan. Moses is concerned about this. He says, well, the problem is that if we give you your inheritance now, you won't go with us over here and help us get rid of the Canaanites, which is what we're supposed to do, what God has told us to do. And so they make an oath, and part of the tribe of Manasseh then decides they would also like to stay over here. And so they all make an oath that they will live here and receive their inheritance here, but they will go and try and help them get rid of the Canaanites. And when they do that, Moses says, okay, and gives them lands for inheritance. Gad right here, right up to the Jabbok River, so right on this is the Gilead area, so right up to the Jabbok River, and Manasseh here, and Reuben down here in between the Moabites and the Ammonites. So this becomes their lands of inheritance.